Jacob had always lived an ordinary life. A devoted father, a hard-working employee, and a kind neighbor, he had never considered himself extraordinary in any way. Yet everything changed one fateful afternoon when he suffered a sudden heart attack. As his body collapsed to the ground, his consciousness was thrust into a realm beyond human comprehension, a place where time, space, and reality itself seemed to dissolve into pure, radiant presence. Jacob found himself enveloped in a golden light, a warmth unlike anything he had ever felt. It wasn't just warmth, it was love, all-encompassing and overwhelming. He became aware of a presence before him, a figure radiating peace and authority. It was Jesus. Though Jacob had been raised with a faith in God, nothing could have prepared him for the sheer reality of this encounter. As Jesus gazed at him, there was no judgment in his eyes, only love. Yet Jacob instinctively knew he was about to witness the totality of his life from a perspective far greater than his own. In an instant, his entire existence unfolded before him, not as a series of memories, but as a tapestry of interconnected events. Every action, every word, every thought he had ever had rippled outward, affecting others in ways he had never imagined. He saw moments of kindness, small acts that seemed insignificant at the time, but had changed the course of someone else's life. A time he had encouraged a struggling co-worker, the moment he had helped a homeless man on the street, the nights he had spent comforting his child after nightmares. But just as vividly, he saw the moments he had caused harm. A careless word that had shattered someone's confidence, a moment of anger that had wounded his loved ones, an opportunity to show love that he had ignored. Every choice, whether good or bad, had sent waves through the lives of those around him. Jesus gently placed a hand on Jacob's and turned his palm upward. There, illuminated in the divine light, was an unmistakable M shape formed by the natural lines on his skin. Jacob stared at it, confused. Before he could ask, Jesus spoke. "This mark is not just yours, Jacob. Many carry it, though few understand its meaning. It is a symbol of divine calling, a mission to spread love, healing, and guidance in a world that desperately needs it." Tears welled in Jacob's eyes as he struggled to grasp the weight of this revelation. "But I'm just an ordinary man," he said. "How could I be chosen for something so important?" Jesus smiled, his voice calm yet filled with certainty. "It is not perfection that I seek, but intention. Free will is a gift, and it is given so that love may be chosen freely, not forced. The world is fractured, but light shines brightest in the darkest places. Your mission is to be that light, to remind others of their purpose, to inspire them to choose love over fear." Jacob felt a deep shift within him, as though his very soul had been realigned with a greater truth. He suddenly understood that life was not merely about personal achievement or survival. It was about connection. It was about living with purpose, with awareness, with love. Then, as swiftly as he had arrived in that divine realm, Jacob felt himself being pulled back. The golden light faded, and he awoke in a hospital bed, gasping for air. His heart was still weak, but his spirit had never felt stronger. From that moment forward, Jacob dedicated his life to sharing his experience. He spoke to family, friends, strangers, anyone willing to listen. He shared his testimony of heaven, the interconnectedness of all souls, and the urgent need to live intentionally. He emphasized that the M mark on his hand, and on the hands of many others, was not a coincidence but a divine reminder of their role in a greater plan. At first, people were skeptical, but as he continued to speak with unwavering conviction, his message began to resonate. Stories emerged from individuals who, after hearing Jacob's experience, began seeing their own lives differently. Some found new meaning in their daily interactions, realizing that every choice had consequences beyond what they could see. Others, inspired by Jacob's words, chose to mend broken relationships, to forgive past wounds, to embrace a love that transcended human understanding. As his testimony spread, it reached audiences across the globe. Through interviews, articles, and even personal meetings, Jacob's story ignited a movement of introspection and transformation. People who had long felt lost began recognizing their inherent purpose. Those who had lived in fear started choosing love instead. Skeptics, though not always convinced, couldn't deny the impact of his words. One evening, as Jacob stood before a crowd of thousands, he looked out at the faces filled with hope, curiosity, and longing. He raised his hands, palms facing outward, revealing the M mark that had forever changed his life. "This," he said, "is not just a mark, it is a message, a reminder that we are not here by accident. We are called to something greater, to be vessels of love, to uplift one another, to trust in a plan far beyond our understanding. The world is fractured, but we are not powerless. We have been given the gift of choice. And today I ask you, will you choose love?" A hush fell over the crowd as his words settled into their hearts. Then, one by one, hands began to rise, palms facing outward, revealing their own M marks. Some were large, some faint, some barely visible, but they were there, a silent affirmation that they too had been called. Tears streamed down Jacob's face as he realized the depth of what was unfolding. His experience had not been just for him, it was for everyone. It was a beacon, a reminder, a call to awaken. In that moment, Jacob understood the full meaning of his journey. Life's purpose was not about seeking perfection, but about embracing grace. It was about recognizing the divine in each other and choosing every day to act with love. The M was not a symbol of status or privilege, but of responsibility, a sign that those who bore it had a mission to illuminate the world with kindness, to bring healing where there was hurt, and to remind humanity that they were never alone. And so, Jacob's story continued to inspire, not as a tale of one man's experience, but as a movement, a testament to the power of love, the importance of connection, and the divine mission woven into the very fabric of existence. For those who listened, the question remained, would they heed the call? As Jacob's message spread, a quiet revolution began. People from all walks of life, teachers, nurses, artists, even those battling addiction or despair, started sharing stories of awakening. A woman in Brazil traced the M on her palm and realized her decades of volunteering in orphanages weren't just acts of charity, but part of a sacred thread woven into her destiny. A teenager in India, once suicidal, found hope in the idea that his existence mattered, that his pain could one day turn into purpose. The mark became a symbol of unity, transcending language, culture, and religion, reminding humanity that they were bound by something ancient and divine. Yet Jacob's journey wasn't without trials. Skeptics dismissed his testimony as hallucinations or attention-seeking. Media outlets sensationalized his story, reducing it to clickbait headlines about heaven's secret hand code. Even some religious leaders accused him of heresy, claiming divine revelation belonged only to prophets of old. But Jacob remained steadfast. "This isn't about me," he'd say. "It's about us. The mark isn't mine, it's ours. And the message isn't new. It's as old as creation itself. Love one another." One evening, during a talk in a small, dimly lit community hall, an elderly man stood trembling. His voice cracked as he spoke. "I've carried guilt for 50 years. I abandoned my family. I thought God could never forgive me." Jacob walked to him, took his hand and pointed to the man's palm. "See this? It's not a stamp of perfection. It's a promise that redemption is always possible. Jesus didn't show me heaven to condemn us. He showed it to free us." The room erupted in tears and applause, not for Jacob, but for the unshakable truth that no soul was beyond grace. Over time, grassroots movements emerged. M-Mark support groups formed, not as cults, but as communities committed to acts of radical kindness. Restaurants offered free meals to the homeless, labeled subtly with #mission. Schools integrated compassion exercises, teaching children to see their choices as sacred. Even corporations, often criticized for cold ambition, began funding mental health initiatives, inspired by employees who'd quietly shared Jacob's story in break rooms. But Jacob's greatest challenge came when his own faith wavered. Years into his mission, exhaustion set in. The weight of others' expectations and his own relentless pace left him drained. One night, staring at his hands, he whispered, "Did I imagine it all? What if I failed?" In that moment of doubt, a warmth brushed his palm, fleeting but unmistakable. The next morning, a letter arrived from a woman he'd met once. "Your words saved my son. He's clean now. He teaches others to find their M." "Thank you." Jacob wept, realizing heaven's work didn't demand grand gestures, only faithful small steps. As he aged, Jacob's lectures grew fewer, but his influence deepened. Documentaries and books preserved his testimony, yet he insisted the true legacy lived in everyday people choosing love. On his deathbed, surrounded by family, he smiled faintly. "Don't grieve, I'm going home. But you, look at your hands, keep the light burning." When he passed, mourners noted something strange. The M on his palm, once faint, now shimmered like etched gold. Scientists called it a trick of light, believers called it a sign, but for those who'd felt the mark's call, it was a beacon, proof that a life lived in love never truly ends. Today, the movement thrives. Strangers greet each other with open palms, a silent nod to shared purpose. And in moments of darkness, millions trace their M and remember, they are seen, they are chosen, they are never alone. The divine signature, as Jacob promised, was never hidden, it was always in their hands.